We are less than 3 weeks away from the 2026 NBA trade deadline. Thursday, February 5th, the last day that any team can make a trade this season. So today, I want to give you guys 15 NBA players that could get traded by this year's deadline. Some of them you may have heard before in trade rumors, some obvious ones, and some players that may come as a surprise. And if there's anybody that you think could get traded that I didn't mention in this video, let me know down below. And if there's a player that I said that you don't think is getting traded, also let me know why down below. And like always, if you could drop a thumbs up on this video, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's get into this. So let's just get Anthony Davis and Jonathan Kuminga out of the way. By the time you guys are seeing this video, Jonathan Kuminga may have already been traded, and the same thing with Anthony Davis. Now I'm going to go a little bit more in depth to Anthony Davis. I'm not even including really a full nomination for Jonathan Kuminga because we know that's happening. We all know that's happening. But the Anthony Davis trade discussions are a little bit more interesting in my opinion. We know that Anthony Davis was pretty much made available by the Dallas Mavericks after their slow start and after Nico Harrison got fired. AD is 32 years old. He's going to be 33 years old in March. He has a $54 million contract this year. He's under guaranteed control for next year at $58.4 million. And in 2028, a $62.7 million player option when he's going to be around 35 years old. We've heard it from Anthony Davis and Rich Paul that he's most likely going to want an extension for whoever trades for him this year at the deadline. AD last year got hurt in his first game as a Maverick. He was dealing with a groin issue last year. This year, he's dealt with the eye issue, calf, Achilles, and most recently, the hand injury, which now is going to put him out for at least 6 weeks. That's when he's going to get reevaluated around March, so there's a chance he could help out a contender. But what I think makes AD's market a little bit more interesting, it feels like Dallas has definitely slashed the asking price a little bit. Maybe it's just some matching salaries, some expiring contracts, maybe a low-tier pick or young player in the trade. But what teams can look at this like, what Washington just did with Trae Young, what Toronto did last year with Brandon Ingram, you could acquire Anthony Davis for 10 cents on the dollar and still, quote unquote, tank the rest of the season, get a top 10 pick in the draft, and have Anthony Davis all systems go for the 2027 season. So I think that really opens up the suitors. We've heard Atlanta and Toronto at some points this year, and you'd think Anthony Davis would be to help them in the playoffs this year, but could a team like Chicago, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, or Charlotte look to trade for Anthony Davis for basically nothing? You don't have to give up any of your prized possessions in terms of draft capital or young players. Anthony Davis is not going to hurt your tank this year just because you may not ask him to play again this year, but then you can get your top 10 pick, you keep all your young players in good picks, and you get Anthony Davis at full strength at the start of the 2027 season. It's not the worst idea, and I think that could make Anthony Davis's market a little bit more interesting over the next 3 weeks. So it feels like Anthony Davis is going to get traded. I would say it's not at 100% chance because Dallas could keep him throughout the rest of the year. Maybe teams become desperate for Anthony Davis in the offseason, or Dallas could just maybe win the lottery. They don't own their first round pick next year. Charlotte does. So maybe they're going to try to compete in 2027 with Anthony Davis. We'll have to wait and see. Ja Morant is another name that has been thrown around as of late from the Memphis Grizzlies. I've already talked to you guys about how Shams Charania reported last week that for the first time since drafting Ja, the Grizzlies are open to trading him. And then we saw that weird kind of argument between him and Vince Williams ahead of the Berlin game against the Orlando Magic. Ja is 26 years old, under contract for the next 3 years, but unlike Anthony Davis, that third year is fully guaranteed at just $44.8 million compared to AD's player option of $62 million. Who knows what decision he will make by then, but you know if you trade for Ja, you have him for this year, next year, in 2028, no matter what. And this also might be the lowest value Ja could be at in his career. He's been banged up for pretty much the last 3.5 years, just 9 games in 2024, missed 32 games in 2025, and has only played 18 games this year, dealing with a calf issue. He's shooting just 40% from the field, 20% from three. He's a smaller guard who's not a great defender, who's not a great switching defender either on the perimeter or down low. He likes to have the ball in his hands, so there is somewhat of a risk in trading for Ja Morant, but there's plenty of point guard needing teams out there. Could the Miami Heat say, you know what, we could turn around Ja Morant's career, we can get him in the Heat culture system and turn him into that all-star point guard he was back in 2022 and 2023? Could Milwaukee say, you know what, this could be a last-ditch effort to go out and make Giannis Antetokounmpo happy? We don't really have to gut our roster. We don't have to trade any future first-round picks. Maybe all it takes is Kuzma and Bobby Portis in a way. Could a team like Brooklyn try to go out and get Ja Morant? Could there be a surprise team like the Sacramento Kings or the Portland Trailblazers or the Phoenix Suns say, you know what, we're willing to take the risk on Ja Morant? There is a chance he could get traded by the deadline. If not, that could kind of get rediscussed in the offseason. So we know that the Toronto Raptors are interested in Anthony Davis. Another big man that's made an all-star game in the past that they could be interested in, Domantas Sabonis of the Sacramento Kings. Domantas Sabonis has been a very productive player ever since getting traded to the Sacramento Kings back in 2022. He was a part of the Light the Beam year in 2023, in which they made the playoffs, and he was an All-NBA player. And you can rely on Domantas Sabonis' health a little bit more than Anthony Davis. Now, I know he's been out a ton this year with the knee injury, but he's still just 29 years old. Sabonis is a very interesting player to acquire because of his very specific play style, where he likes to be this offensive hub. He likes to operate out of the post. He's not the most athletic big. He's not a great rim protector, but he's a very productive offensive player, rebounder, has a great touch around the rim, and has very elite court vision for somebody of his size at 6'10". So maybe a team that's looking for that center upgrade that's not the Toronto Raptors could also look out and trade for Domantas Sabonis, because it does feel like everybody in Sacramento outside of like Nick Clifford, Maxime Reynaud, and Keegan Murray is going to be made available at the deadline. So yeah, I could talk about Malik Monk, Dennis Schroeder, DeMar DeRozan. The only other king I want to talk about for this video is Zach LaVine, because I do wonder if any Zach LaVine trade could transpire this year at the deadline. Could we see the Sacramento Kings try to trade for John Morant or Anthony Davis? It's something Vivek could do, and they could use Zach LaVine's matching salary. Zach LaVine is making around $47.5 million this year. He has a $48.9 million player option in 2027 that he's most likely going to opt into, so it has 1 year left after this year. There is a possibility Zach LaVine could opt out for a longer term deal. Say he opts out of that $48.9 million and somebody threw 3 years, $90 million at him, a la like Gordon Hayward back in 2021 when he left the Boston Celtics, did the same thing to get over $100 million from the Charlotte Hornets. He's been in Sacramento for about a year now after being included in that De'Aaron Fox trade last year. It probably just cost you matching salary, so yeah, it could be a last-ditch effort by the Milwaukee Bucks. It could be the LA Clippers looking for another scoring option. It could be the Golden State Warriors not finding anything else out there and trying to get Kuminga into somebody. I think if there's any type of offer out there for Zach LaVine, Sacramento would accept it, so we'll see if anything transpires until the February deadline. I already mentioned one Dallas Mavericks center that could be traded in Anthony Davis. How about another one in Daniel Gaffford? I think Daniel Gaffford has a very robust market out there. I'm sure the Indiana Pacers, the Toronto Raptors, the Boston Celtics, the Atlanta Hawks, the Charlotte Hornets would all be interested in adding Daniel Gaffford at the deadline, and it might be wise for Dallas to sell high on Gaffford right now, given that the contract does get a little bit expensive over the next few years. $14 million this year, not bad at all, but he signed a 3-year extension in the offseason where he's making $17 million next year, $18 million in 2028, and about $19 million in 2029. Gaffford is a good player, but injuries have kind of made him a little bit banged up here in 2026, and he's never really played more than 21 minutes a night for the Dallas Mavericks since being acquired by them back at the 2024 deadline. Man, Nico Harrison really cooked at the 2024 deadline by adding PJ Washington and Daniel Gaffford, and he's still just 27 years old as well, so I think a couple teams could try to go out and get Daniel Gaffford. So I mentioned how the Indiana Pacers could also want to get Daniel Gaffford. Could they maybe try to trade away Benedict Mathurin this year at the deadline? Benedict Mathurin was part of that 2022 draft class. He did not get extended like J-Dub, Dyson Daniels, or Christian Brown from this past offseason. So the 23-year-old could leave Indiana this offseason. He will be a restricted free agent, but we know that Indiana doesn't like to just throw out money to anybody, so I'm not sure they would actually match a deal Mathurin could get. Now, Mathurin's value could be all over the place. Do you actually value him as a high volume scorer, or do you think he's not really that impactful and he's just kind of like a score first guy? Can he move well without the ball? Can he be a good passer? Can he be a good transition player? Can he be a good defender? Those are still in question for Mathurin. He's been banged up this year like every Indiana Pacer. In about 32 minutes in 24 games, he's shooting just 42% from the field, but doesn't have a lot of help out there. He's averaging about 18 points, 5.5 rebounds, and shooting 36% from three. I think there's definitely value for Benedict Mathurin on the open market, so a team may want to trade for Benedict Mathurin to maybe keep him in-house, make everything a little bit easier and extending him in the offseason, and it just might be wise for Indiana just to cash in now on Mathurin before he potentially leaves for nothing in the offseason. Let's talk about two Brooklyn Nets now. The first one we're going to talk about, Michael Porter Jr., who's having the best year of his career in year number 7. Now, we all knew Michael Porter Jr. had somewhat of this in him when he was drafted out of Missouri back in the 2018 NBA draft. Now, the back issues made him fall to number 14 because a lot of people were very scared of the medicals coming out of college. He was always kind of like this tertiary scoring option, sometimes secondary in Denver next to Jokic and Jamal Murray. And this year, he's been phenomenal for the Brooklyn Nets as their number 1 option. In 31 games, he's shooting 48% from the field, 40% from three, averaging 26 points, 7.5 rebounds. He's getting double teamed. He's taking incredibly difficult shots, but they're going in. And Porter Jr. has 2 years left on the contract, including this year. I thought this was untradeable going into the year at $38 million for this season, $40.8 million for 2027. But I do think Brooklyn would net a very good return for Michael Porter Jr. It just makes things a little bit more difficult because Brooklyn does not own their 2027 first round pick. So they want to be good next year. And if you're going to trade away your best player right now, that's not really going to help you. Try to not give Houston a really good pick in the 2027 draft. But I do think there's going to be plenty of suitors trying to trade for Michael Porter Jr. And who knows, like one back injury, one bad shooting slump could make a team just pull out. So Brooklyn might want to just sell high. And the other Brooklyn net that I feel like is going to get traded, maybe there's a chance he gets bought out. Who knows? Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas is 24 years old. He kind of realizes that Brooklyn does not value him as much as he thinks he should get paid. That's why he didn't get extended from the Nets in the offseason. He signs the qualifying offer, which basically gave him a de facto no trade clause, but he could be an unrestricted free agent this offseason, so Brooklyn can't match any type of deal he would get this summer. And Cam Thomas has been banged up this year for the Nets. He recently came back. He's playing about 25 minutes a night, and in about 16 games this year, he's averaging about 18 points. He's shooting 35% from three, 42% from the field, 45% on twos. And what Cam Thomas needs to do to get a contract that he wants in the offseason, he needs to go to a team that's going to make the playoffs, and he needs to show the rest of the league, I could be a contributing player on a team to win a playoff series. I could play off-ball defense. I could play on-ball defense. I can make extra reads. I could run in transition. I could dive for loose balls. I'm not going to just be somebody that just wants to take as many shots and have the ball in their hands as much as possible. And I do think maybe Brooklyn could get a second rounder for Cam Thomas this year at the deadline. It's better than him walking for nothing in a few months. So I have a little bit of a wild card here. I have Jarrett Allen of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I was going back and forth between Garland, Hunter, and Jarrett Allen, and who Cleveland could maybe trade if they do want to pull something off at the deadline. We just saw what Trae Young went for. We're seeing what kind of Ja Morant is going for right now. I'm not sure Cleveland would love the return that Darius Garland would get them as a smaller guard on a big contract. I'm not the biggest fan of the Donovan Mitchell Darius Garland backcourt because I do think it has its limitations defensively when you get to the playoffs. So I do think Jarrett Allen would have a little bit more value. They'd bump Evan Mobley to the 5. Maybe they'd get a guard or a wing for Jarrett Allen, who's 27 years old. He's averaging 13.5 points, 8 rebounds this year. He's still a productive center, but he's not super consistent. He's making about $28 million next year, $30 million in 2028, and $32.4 million in 2029. But I do think they would actually get a better return in terms of assets than they would for Darius Garland. So that's why I brought up Jarrett Allen here. If I had to guess, I just feel like Cleveland wouldn't make a major trade like this until they have like a round 1 or round 2 exit if that were to happen in the upcoming playoffs. But I wouldn't be surprised. Hey, we saw Luka Doncic get traded last year. Everybody's on the table now. So I talked about how Ja Morant could get traded. So what if he actually gets traded? Would Memphis say, let's trade away Jaren Jackson Jr.? Let's blow this thing up. We're not going to be competing against Denver or OKC over the next few years. So let's have our peak be a couple years down the line. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 26 years old, I think would have a very strong trade market and would net the Grizzlies a very good return. I know the contract goes up, but at $35 million this year, you can almost trade him to any single team in the league and they can easily get to the matching salary. But that goes up to $49 million next year, which is definitely going to complicate some things and would obviously slash the type of return they can get, especially if they decided to trade him mid-season down the line. Jaren Jackson Jr. this year has been averaging around 18.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field, 36% from three, 76% from the free throw line for the Memphis Grizzlies. I still think he plays fine defense out there. I don't think it's been as good this year as it was last year. The offense has definitely been a little bit disappointing, but Memphis may just look around and say, we traded Bane last year. If we trade Ja, let's think about trading Jaren Jackson Jr. and completely changing the identity of this team under Tumasi Salo. They're going to have at least one lottery pick most likely this year. They're going to have multiple first rounders this year. Maybe they can get a little bit more and trade away Triple J, who I think would immediately become the best player on the trade market and could net them the best return out of anybody we're going to talk about in this video. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of New Orleans Pelicans, and it's not going to include Trey Murphy. I feel like his value is going to be way too high this year at the deadline. He's under such a good contract in New Orleans, so why would the Pelicans move him going forward since he's still incredibly young? I'm going to talk about Herb Jones, who, like Jonathan Kuminga, recently became trade eligible since he did sign an extension with the Pelicans in the offseason. I think it might be wise for the Pelicans to get out of this extension a little bit early. So he's making 13 mil this year, 14 mil next year. great value. Then it goes up to 20.8 million, 22.5 million, and 24 million as a player option in 2030. And Herb Jones is a really good player. I don't think his talent is going to be utilized to the fullest here in New Orleans. I really want to see him as like a glue guy in a playoff series, and that's what's most likely going to happen if a team trades for him this year at the deadline. He's shooting a career low 39% from the field, 33% from three. He's always had three-point concerns, even coming out of Alabama early in his career, and it feels like that 2024 season where he shot 41% from three is going to be an outlier in his career. But you're trading Herb Jones because of the defense and how he can guard guys on the perimeter. He can guard multiple guys. He can fight over screens. He can guard multiple positions. It could be a center. It could be a point guard. He was on all defensive first team in 2024 when he was healthy. He was 5th in defensive player of the year voting. He was banged up all last year, and it would make sense for the Pelicans to trade him right now, given that he's 27 years old. By the end of this contract extension, he'll be 32. I actually think it's a no-brainer for the Pelicans to trade him at the deadline. They definitely should, and if they can get more than one first-round pick for him, that's a great deal. Next up, I want to talk about Tyler Herro. I feel like I had to talk about one Miami Heat player in this video. Now, you could bring up Bam Adebayo, probably not going to happen. You could bring up Norman Powell since he's a free agent at the end of the year. Maybe they try to move Terry Rozier's expiring contract as well. Maybe it's Andrew Wiggins. Maybe it's Kel'el Ware, because there's always been a back and forth between him and Coach Spo in Miami. But I'm going to go with Tyler Herro. This could be a surprise one as well. All throughout the fall, Tyler Herro became extension eligible, and the Miami Heat's way over the last few years, extend your guys early. They like to get these contract extensions done. They did it with Jimmy in the past. They did it with Bam Adebayo recently. They did it with Nikola Jovic before the season started. So Herro is going to be making $33 million next year, a really good value. But do you want to extend Herro for maybe more than that when he's an unrestricted free agent at 27 years old after the 2027 season? Now, if they went out and got somebody like a John Morant or somebody on that level, they could use Tyler Herro's matching contract without having to forego any type of draft capital or young players in that deal. But it feels like we're pretty much at the point where we thought Miami could be midway through, around 500. And I wonder if Pat Riley's going to do anything this year at the deadline. Another player that feels like he could get traded by this year's deadline, Kristaps Porzingis of the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks essentially didn't have to give up too much for Kristaps in the offseason, given his injury history and his expiring contract, but they still gave up roughly the 22nd overall pick in the draft to get this deal done. And Kristaps has not been available this year for the Atlanta Hawks. Stop me when you've heard that story before. He's only played 17 games out of Atlanta's 43 this season. He's dealt with an illness, and he's currently dealing with an Achilles scare right now, and you don't want to rush that whatsoever. He's shooting about 45% from the field, 36% from three, averaging 17 points and 5 rebounds. We thought we can get at least a semi-decent sample size with him and Trae Young this year. That's not happening whatsoever. I think Atlanta is fine with Kristaps just walking in the offseason, but could they actually try to leverage his $30 million expiring contract for a bigger name, somebody that we've mentioned already, or maybe somebody that I'm about to mention? Because it feels like that's going to be Atlanta's bigger picture here. They're most likely going to have a top 5, top 6 draft pick this season from the Pelicans or the Bucks, wherever that swap ends up. They're going to have loads of cap space. They still have a decent young core to build around. I would say this year's been a little bit disappointing. I don't know if ownership is going to come crashing down at all and say, I want to make a big move, since they traded away Trae Young, and I'm interested to see if Kristaps gets moved over the next few weeks. So the Utah Jazz have actually been pretty competitive this year, but we know that their pick is top 8 protected going to the Oklahoma City Thunder, so it makes all the sense in the world for them to finish in that bottom 8. So could we actually see Lauri Markkanen get traded? Could we see a team that's at the top of their conference right now, or maybe in the middle part of it, look to make a win now move and get the 28-year-old 7'1" scorer who's averaging 28 points this year, 7 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field, 36% from 3, and 88% from the free throw line? I feel like this could be some type of like Desmond Bane or Mikal Bridges type return for Lauri Markkanen, who's been such a really impressive scorer this year for the Utah Jazz in about 33 games. Now, Markkanen has never played over 70 games in his career as well, so you do have to deal with some injury concerns. Now, over the last few years, I think he could have played a little bit more, but Utah was obviously trying to lose as many games as possible to get the highest draft pick. Markkanen isn't under the worst contract in the world. I remember I made a video last March talking about the 15 worst contracts in the NBA, and with the way Markkanen was playing, I had him in that video. I don't think I would have him in that video anymore. He's making $46 million this year and next year, $49 million in 2028, but $53 million in 2029 when he's going to be around 32 years old. I don't think that's terrible. I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff unless there's a serious injury that occurs, but I think there would be so many teams that would look to trade for Markkanen. Could Golden State, could Phoenix, could Detroit, Toronto, San Antonio, OKC, Minnesota. I think there's so many teams that would be interested in trading for Lauri Markkanen. We'll just see if Danny Ainge just has an unrealistic asking price for him. Now, this is the interesting dilemma with Zion Williamson and the Pelicans, because Zion Williamson has been playing very well over the last few weeks, and I've said that that so many times in my life, and then he gets hurt and we lose all the value. So Zion Williamson has a very specific contract, right? That's not normal in the NBA. He's making $39 million this year, $42 million next year, and $44.8 million in 2028. You may say that's a lot of money to take on, but you can cut him at any time and you don't have to pay a dime. It's not guaranteed money because of the injury clauses in this extension Zion signed a couple years ago off his rookie deal. Zion has been healthy as of late. He's played 27 games this year. Out of the Pelicans, 43. He's averaging 22 points, 5.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. He's shooting about 58% on twos this year, which is a little bit lower in his career. But Zion's also playing a little bit less as well. If you would look at his per 36 numbers, 28 points per game. He's only playing 29 minutes a night. They're not trying to overtax Zion, which makes a ton of sense. But the fact that Zion is healthy right now, still 25 years old, he still looks like he's in the best shape of his career. Could we get some new value for Zion Williamson on the trade market? Could a team look to try to get Zion Williamson out of New Orleans, and maybe he would actually blossom into the player that we think he could have been coming out of Duke in that 2019 draft? Could there be a young team like Portland, Memphis, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Washington? Low-key wouldn't hate Indiana. Low-key wouldn't hate it, but it's a massive risk in trading for Zion Williamson. I just wonder with his recent play, the fact that he's healthy right now, playing well, the non-guarantee in his contract, if it's only matching salary to get there, I'd rather take a risk on Zion than Anthony Davis given their age difference. So I've already talked about 15 players, and that's what I said I was going to talk about in this video. I'm going to talk about one more, an additional bonus 16th guy. I wonder if he does get traded, man. Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. So yeah, I've been watching the Milwaukee Bucks a lot as of late, and this team looks lifeless out there. They've had some really bad losses in the month of January, and I just wonder if Giannis is going to look around and say, how does this team get better? How are we going to contend in the Eastern Conference, which is wide open right now, which is a weak conference, and they are still not even a top 10 team in the conference in the moment I'm recording this. They are 24th in the NBA in terms of net rating, 24th. And I know Giannis missed some time this year, but if Giannis is going to miss some time, which he normally does, you need this team to stay afloat. They don't have a Damian Lillard to carry the offensive load. They don't have a Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton to carry the load if Giannis is hurt. It's up to Kevin Porter Jr., Ryan Rollins, Bobby Portis, and Kyle Kuzma. Miles Turner has not been playing great basketball right now. Yeah, this team could go out and trade for a Miles Bridges, Jeremy Grant, John Morant, and Anthony Davis. Sure, I don't want them to trade away their 2031 first. That would be very risky to do. But I wonder if Giannis says, okay, this is it. I spent a long time here. There's no path for us to really compete while I'm still in my prime. I would like to get traded. I wonder if Giannis would still want to dictate where he goes, because I'm sure there's plenty of teams that would like to trade for Giannis, maybe Atlanta, Houston, San Antonio, Miami, New York. There's plenty of teams out there that would like to trade for Giannis, but would they be a little bit scared given the asking price, plus that Giannis could be a free agent after the end of next year's regular season in 2027? They'd probably want to trade for Giannis if he's giving them a guarantee he would sign an extension with them. I think Milwaukee should trade Giannis. I think that's their only way out, and if they don't trade Giannis, they better not trade away their 2031 first. They better not trade for like DeJounte Murray or Miles Bridges or Jeremy Grant. That's going to get you nowhere. That's basically what you did last year with Kyle Kuzma. Look how dumb that looks now. So yeah, that is going to be it for me. Hope you guys did enjoy. Those were 15 plus 116 guys that I think could end up getting traded this year by the deadline. Giannis would definitely feel like it's Luka-esque. Nothing will top Luka because it came out of nowhere, but I still think this is going to be a very interesting trade deadline. So make sure you guys are subscribed for all that trade deadline type of content. If you guys think there's somebody that I mentioned that won't get traded or should never get traded, let me know down below. Or maybe there's a player that you think could get traded that I didn't mention. Let me know down below as well. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.